తెలుసు మన మంచి పుస్తకం గత సంవత్సరం ఆగస్టు నుంచి దాదాపుగా వారానికి ఒక మంచి పుస్తకాన్ని, విలువైనటువంటి వ్యాఖ్యానాన్ని, వక్తల్ని మీ ముందుకు తీసుకొస్తూ ఉంది. ఆ క్రమంలోనే ఈరోజు సమకాలీన భారతదేశంలో రాజకీయాలను ప్రభావితం చేస్తున్నటువంటి కీలకమైన అంశం, దాని చుట్టూ మిత్రులారా, మిగతా వాళ్ళందరూ ఒక అపూర్వానంద్ గారు, సీమా చిస్తి గారు తప్ప మిగతా వాళ్ళందరూ మైక్ మ్యూట్ చేసుకోవాలని రిక్వెస్ట్ చేస్తున్నాను. సీమా గారు, అపూర్వానంద్ గారు, రాంపుణ్యాని గారు మినహా మిగతా వాళ్ళందరూ మైక్ మ్యూట్ చేసుకోవాలి దయచేసి. ఈరోజు మనం పరిచయం చేయడానికి ఎంపిక చేసిన పుస్తకం రిలీజియస్ నేషనలిజం, సోషల్ పర్సెప్షన్స్ అండ్ వాయిలెన్స్. జాతీయవాదానికి సంబంధించి అనేక రకాలైన వ్యాఖ్యానాలు ఉన్నాయి. నాగరికత పరిణామ క్రమంలో జాతీయత కూడా ఒక్కొక్క దశ నుంచి మరొక దశకి పరిణామం చెందుతూ ఉంది. స్థూలంగా మనం విభజించుకుంటే ప్రగతిశీల జాతీయత, తిరోగామి జాతీయత కింద మనం రెండు తరగతుల కింద జాతీయత భావాల్ని మనం విశ్లేషించుకోవచ్చు, అర్థం చేసుకోవచ్చు, విభజించుకోవచ్చు. ఇప్పుడు మనం ఈ పుస్తకంలో ఉన్నటువంటి అంశం రిలీజియస్ నేషనలిజం. ఒక రకంగా చూసినప్పుడు ఇది మితవాద లేదంటే తిరోగామి జాతీయతకు సంబంధించినటువంటి వర్గీకరణలో పౌలోకి వచ్చే పుస్తకం. ఎందుకంటే సమాజం పరిణామ క్రమంలో ముందుకు వెళ్లే కొద్దీ మనుషులందరూ సమానులే అనే భావన దిశగా మనందరం ప్రయాణించాలి. దాని ఆధారంగానే ఆధునిక ప్రజాస్వామ్యాలు, ప్రాతినిధ్య ప్రజాస్వామ్య వ్యవస్థలు నెలకొంటూ ఉన్నాయి. ఆ ప్రాతినిధ్య ప్రజాస్వామ్య వ్యవస్థల్ని నిర్వహించే దానికోసం ఆధునిక లౌకిక ప్రజాతంత్ర రాజ్యాంగాలు ఉనికిలోకి వస్తూ ఉన్నాయి. అయితే ఆయా సమాజాల నడత, గమనం, ఆ సమాజాల్లో ఉన్నటువంటి వర్గాలు, వాటి పొందిక, బలాబలాలు, వీటిని ఆధారం చేసుకొని కొన్ని సందర్భాల్లో మితవాద జాతీయత ప్రగతిశీల ప్రజాతంత్ర జాతీయతని అధిగమించి ప్రజల ఆలోచనల్ని కమ్మేసే పరిస్థితికి వస్తుంది. అయితే ఇది భారతదేశానికి సంబంధించినటువంటి పరిమితమైనటువంటి అవగాహన కింద మనం తీసుకోవడానికి లేదు. ప్రపంచవ్యాప్తంగా అనేక దేశాల్లో ఈ రకమైనటువంటి పరిణామాలు కొనసాగుతూ ఉన్నాయి. సమకాలీన ప్రపంచంలో కూడా 21వ శతాబ్దం మన ప్రపంచ పెట్టుబడిదారీ విధానం ఆధునిక దశకు చేరుకుంది అని చెప్పుకుంటున్నటువంటి దశలో కూడా ఈ అంశాలని మనం, ఈ కోణాలని గమనించవచ్చు. అయితే ప్రత్యేకమైనటువంటి మన పాఠకులకి ఉపయోగపడే పద్ధతుల్లో ప్రత్యేకమైనటువంటి శ్రమ తీసుకొని రాంపుణ్యాని గారు భారతదేశంలో ఉన్నటువంటి మతతత్వ లేదంటే మతవాద జాతీయత, సామాజిక అవగాహనలు, హింస, ఈ మూడు ఒక విలక్షణమైనటువంటి అంశాలని గుదిగుచ్చి 4000 సంవత్సరాల చరిత్రని మన ముందు ఉంచేందుకు ప్రయత్నం చేశారు. ఈ మొత్తం 13 అధ్యాయాలుగా ఉన్నటువంటి పుస్తకం 375 పేజీల నిడివిలో ఉంది. చాలా శ్రమ కోర్చి ప్రాచీన కాలానికి సంబంధించినటువంటి, అంటే ఆర్యుల రాగతో మొదలుపెట్టి కుల వ్యవస్థ ఆవిర్భావం, కుల వ్యవస్థతో పాటు సమాజాన్ని వివిధ తరగతులుగా మనం కాని వాళ్ళు మనము, ఇతరులము అని చెప్పి విభజించే పద్ధతుల్లో ఏర్పాటైనటువంటి సామాజిక వ్యవస్థ, ఆ సామాజిక వ్యవస్థ ఆధునిక కాలానికి వచ్చేటప్పటికి ఈ రోజు ఏ రూపంలో కొనసాగుతుంది అనేది మన ముందు ఉంచడంతో పాటు మొదటి అధ్యాయం మరింత కీలకమైంది. మీడియా, ప్రసార మాధ్యమాలు, రాజ్యానికి ఉన్నటువంటి సంబంధం, ఆధునిక ప్రసార మాధ్యమాలు, ప్రత్యేకించి సోషల్ మీడియా పోషించినటువంటి పాత్ర, ఈ ఒక రకంటే మనం ఈ కుహనా జాతీయవాదాన్ని పెంపొందించడంలో, ఆ కుహనా జాతీయవాద భావాలని, ఆలోచనల్ని ప్రచారం చేయడంలో సోషల్ మీడియా పోషించినటువంటి పాత్ర ప్రత్యేకించి మనందరికీ అర్థమయ్యే రీతిలో దాదాపు 20 పేజీలు మొట్టమొదటి అధ్యాయం కింద ప్రస్తావించారు. ఈ అంశాన్ని పరిచయం చేయడం కోసం ఈరోజు ఢిల్లీ యూనివర్సిటీ ప్రొఫెసర్గా ఉన్నటువంటి అపూర్వానంద్ గారిని, అట్లాగే స్వతంత్ర పరిశోధనాత్మక విలేకరిగా ఉన్నటువంటి సీమా చిస్తి గారిని ఆహ్వానించాం. I welcome all the speakers and the author particularly for giving us permission to have this session, and also I express my gratitude to the presenters for accepting invitation, though we are a small group of people who came together to continue this kind of adventure, we can say. because there are so many YouTube channels around us with lakhs of millions of subscribers, but we are not competing with them because of our genre we have chosen. So these few words I request Seema Chistiji to initiate the presentation.
Oh, thank you so much, Kamvireya, and to your wonderful book club, which I've been following for a while, and your initiative, your courage, your enthusiasm to get authors and presenters has been quite remarkable. And it's a privilege and an honor to be addressing you and to be a part of this. I'm sort of truly pleased. That's one part of the reason why I'm pleased. And the other is my set of guests, my fellow guests, Apurananji and Ramji are also people I greatly admire. Their courage, their ability to speak the truth at a time like this, under very severe provocation, under, I think, one of the biggest assaults that is going on India's sort of secular democracy. It's very system, and perhaps it's sort of civilizational base that is on right now, and to be able to speak as they do, to be able to see things clearly and to assist people in finding the truth from there is truly good. So it's an honor to be with them today. So in a lot of ways, I think a lot of us were sort of late to the party. We kind of did not fully accept what could have been upon us, even though we had ample warning. And I think, senior scholars and people who've been focused on this will date it much earlier. But I think since the 80s, the signs are very clear about what kind of beast and ideology was being nurtured, which kind of kept its entire basis, its popularity centered on hate. Sort of the fact that it didn't stand for anything but against something was just so clear. But I think a lot of us, and I would say me included too, did not probably have the heart, the gumption, or the courage to really see it for what it was, for seeing it in its naked, true self. And now, of course, that it has unveiled itself in various ways, it's kind of easy to kind of see the pattern and to call it out. But I think for a lot of scholars, people, and I think Apurvanand and Ram Punyani are very key there for people who saw it for what it was. So I remember, and I'll just give a very small example, at a time when the Gujarat Riots were on, Gujarat pogrom in 2002, and I was the editor of a news organization. I was the India editor, and I had to, the whole point was that I had to go there and cover it, and I wanted to go and cover it. And I was told that I cannot go and cover it because my name is confusing. So not confusing, but because it is meant to be something which is anti-Muslim, and I'd be taken for a Muslim, however I define my identity. And things came to such a pass that I had a huge fight with my head office. And I said, you cannot take that away from me. I'm going to go for this. And then they were considerate. They were a good organization. They were a solid organization. And they said, no, we're saying it for your safety. I said, no, it's not about my safety. So are we saying that Christians won't cover riots where Christians are involved, or will Hindus not go? Or who will you send exactly for a situation like this? So it was agreed that I will go with 2 identity cards. And 2 of my identity cards were made, one with my married name and one with my maiden name. And it was actually quite a joke because the photos are also quite different on that. And my husband would always say that, yeah, but how will you know which one to fish out when? So I think at that time, despite the fact that that incident happened, we sort of forgot about it because we thought Gujarat was one side of it. And I actually went, it was winter. So I was carrying one identity card in my right pocket and the other one in my left pocket. I went there and I remember fishing out, using my full name sometimes, using my first name only at other times to try and obscure matters. But the fact that we had a mainline, proper, full state in India that was in that situation also didn't fully set out all the red lights and the alarm bells. But I must congratulate Ram because he did. And unfortunately, I really got to read his writings only when the age of unreason was really full blown and upon us. I wish I'd read him before it had fully exploded on the scene. So I think what his book does now and his other writings have always done is 3 things he does very well is, of course, to pull out all the facts, his ability to marshal out facts, to provide conceptual clarity on the issues involved, and his ability to contextualize it and join the right dots and to draw up the pattern, to unveil the jigsaw for what it is. I think in all these three things, he fills in very important holes. These are things which our mainstream media has almost kind of abdicated from. So far from being able to not tell the truth, they're telling a whole lot of willful untruths are going on at all times. So a voice like Ram Punyani, which comes out in this book very clearly with its ability to marshal facts, conceptual clarity, and to contextualize it very honestly, is truly, it's a gift that we have this upon us. So there are a lot of people, for example, I'll give another example of something which Ram analyzes very well. And I'm a fan for that, the way he understands that concept into how they have the success of Modi, which he never, ever hesitates to take on board. So it is not about dismissing him. It is not about undermining his popularity, but actually getting your hands dirty and getting into the heart of what makes him a success. So his understanding of how the whole Mandal upsurge, the revolution, has been folded in and understood, that clarity that he brings to the table is actually very good. It's very simple and easy to understand about how the Hindu umbrella and the Hindu tent has been pushed out and people are accommodated and asked, like, to leave your chappals outside the door. They're asked to leave social justice outside. So come, I will give you a Hindu identity and I'll give you some degree of Samman and I'll give you a place. I'll put you on a shelf somewhere. So you won't have equality. You will not have justice. Please don't speak of it. But the ability of Hindutva to accommodate such a large section of people inside is central to understanding why they're doing well. And his ability to understand that concept has been very good. In this particular book, there are two things that kind of strike me as really good. One is, of course, the whole audacity of the range of subjects that Ram handles in that. And I think it's almost sort of a textbookish in exactly what we need right now, in its ability to, it's a wide canvas, and he's able to bring all that in. So his ability to understand and to sort of locate the roots of the national movement, to classify it, to understand the Hindu nationalism, Hindutva, and Muslim nationalism, and to see it in the context of even the class, the old landed elite, the Jagirdaris, the royal families that were falling apart, who went out of their way and played, their shadow hangs over Gandhi's assassination, and other divisive retrograde movements, their participation and how they came onto the scene. I think Ram explains that very well with the clarity that can be explained to youngsters who are, part of the reason why we have this problem is that you have a large demographic of people who are actually disconnected, physically disconnected from the national movement. They're born so many decades after that into a completely new India, into a literal new India. They're born in the 90s. So his ability to kind of say these facts, state them out, and put them on the table is a very, very useful addition to what we have, to the whole volume of understanding and analysis. And the second thing which he does which is very skillfully handled, is the whole philosophical journey of Hindutva. So I think his ability to kind of sketch out the contours of what is ancient India. Philosophically, he's able to look at Mimamsa, he's able to look at Adi Shankaracharya, he's able to look at the Shramans, the Brahminical ideas prevalent then. He's able to locate Buddhism in that and able to tease out and clarify for you what ancient India was. So I think to be able to attempt a book like this, which takes a philosophical, political, economic look at this phenomenon, understand its roots, its philosophy, and to be able to bring it right down to 2022, I think is its big success. And to do it simply in a way which is disseminable, in a way which is which can be quoted in a way that it's a repository of some very key facts. It's kind of I don't want to call it a data bank, but it's like a very useful kind of set of facts, information that we need to understand this phenomenon so we can best understand it, combat it, and marshal our counter arguments, or to really understand on what grounds we need to counter it. So thank you, Ram, for writing this. And I cannot praise it more. And I'm teaching a small class of 20 students at the Asian College of Journalism. And the introduction to this book, and in fact, I emailed Ram and asked him to mail me a copy of the introduction, is an invaluable source for making them understand what the roots and the context of what we see unfolding in India today and why it matters. So I think for a very comprehensive, deep, as well as a wide look, thank you, Ram, for doing this.
Thanks. Thanks.
Done with.
Thank you, Apuran. I'm done.
Aparvananji?
Yeah.
Please.
Thank you, Viraya, for again having me here. Last time I was here discussing Ashok Vajpayee's edited book on dissent. Rightly said that fora like the one that you have created are very important, very significant, and very crucial for our struggle, our democratic struggle. Because what is being created or distorted is the very public discourse, social discourse, and it's important that we keep not only the right kind of things should be discussed, but also the way you need to discuss ideas should also be kept. Because people are now forgetting that TV channel method of discussion, which is not discussion at all, is now being adopted even by universities or classrooms, which is very, very dangerous. And that's why we need to have a forum like this, where we can sit and discuss laser and not rush and not merely opine and not have ready-made answers to questions which need processing, which need time to think about them. Because if you have ready-made questions, answers to questions, then I think conversation is over. So what's important is to help the society having a conversation with itself. And that was the duty that media had to perform. Unfortunately, it has forgotten that, and is doing something which is very, very perilous for the very concept of discussion or discourse, because we are forgetting what conversation is all about, or what it is like to have a conversation among ourselves. If I have conversation with Seema or Viraya or Ram, we can even differ on many things while agreeing on some points. So that is how knowledge production happens. For a society to forget it is to lose itself. So in these times, to keep doing it requires some audacity, some courage, some, I would say, because you constantly think that we are not getting audience, we are not getting people, and there are lots of reasons to get pessimistic about the state of affairs. But to keep carrying on, and like Sisyphus, keep taking that stone upwards and then falling and then taking it back, is what we need to do. I won't repeat what Seema has said. I think Seema has very beautifully summarized what the book is all about. This book is, as Seema said, a data bank, a repository, and its range is very large and varied too, because it has facts, it has concepts, it discusses concepts, how concepts take shape, and how society forms its perceptions about. It's not only about facts; it's also about perceptions, and perceptions are very important, because and historiography has changed. Because now, if you read the book on Shakuntala by Romila Thapar, or on Somnath by Romila Thapar says that the fact of what actually happened is important. But it's at the same time, it's also important to look at how different generations have understood that fact, quote unquote, how they have interpreted. So it tells you about how society has progressed. And that is very important to chart. the way society forms its perception, why the story of Shakuntala changes in course of generations, and why what James Lane had done, the scholar who wrote on Shivaji, and his book was banned and then unbanned, and Bhandarkar Institute vandalized. What I think research for that book. So what James Lane had done, what Romila Thapar did, and what other scholars do is tell you about the process in which different generations form their perception about that single fact, what we call fact. So yes, fact is important, but also perceptions are important, how perceptions are formed. What we in earlier times, when we were so obsessed with objectivity and positivism, so we were obsessed with finding what actually the fact is, and that I think was our folly, because I remember when this Ram Janmabhoomi Abhiyan was on, which I call a campaign to demolish Babri Mosque. It was called Ram Janmabhoomi Mandir Nirman Abhiyan, etc. I remember historians like Ramcharan Sharma, Irfan Habib, and all others trying tirelessly to tell the people about the fact. And then we realized that it didn't work. It didn't work because we were trying to tell people that, look, this is what archaeology is all about. This is what archaeology says, and this is why the artifacts that they claim to have discovered are not artifacts of those times. But that uncovering of fact or excavation of fact really didn't matter. So that is something we need to think about. When we harp on facts, why it doesn't work, and why people say that it's immaterial. And that's why when we keep doing this fact-checking thing, which is very important, I remember when Trump was in power, so there were multiple fact-checker platforms working tirelessly. And one of them once wrote that we are tired because from morning to night, he lies so much. And the number of lies grow and keep growing. And it becomes impossible for us to keep doing fact-checking. So this mountain of lies, and why people love that lying dictator or that lying demagogue, is something, because they say that, well, yes, he is lying and we love it. He is our liar. And it doesn't matter if he's lying. And this, I remember when people started shouting that, well, Narendra Modi is an idiot and fool because he is telling us that Chandragupta Maurya defeated Alexander the Great on the banks of Ganga, and it's not true. People said, how does it matter if it's not true? He's a history teacher. He is forming a perception, and what he's trying to do suits us. So we don't mind this lie that he is telling, or we don't mind this untruth he's building. And that series of untruth from ancient times to medieval time to modern times, from Chandragupta Maurya to Ashoka to Akbar or Aurangzeb to Nehru. So it's a series of lies, and we need to understand this method at authoritarian rulers like Hitler or like Narendra Modi or like Donald Trump and other leaders like them deploy to perpetuate the power. But even in those times, we need to keep the sanctity of facts alive, and that's what Ram keeps doing. And it's a very daunting task, very boring task, because many a times you come across as a repetitive person. You keep repeating, and people say that you are being repetitive. But it's very important to be repetitive, because in education, we know that by repeating things, you establish certain things. So we shouldn't get tired of repetition. We need to keep repeating, because if we say that, no, now need to say something new. You have said it once, and now tell us something new. And this temptation of saying something new or moving to some new idea is very deceptive. And this is something Gandhi understood it very well, because if you look at the speeches, the writings of Gandhi, he is very repetitive. He keeps repeating, and he is also, in a way, a very boring person, because he's talking about the same thing again and again. If you now read his Prarthana Pravachans, he's telling his audience the same thing every day. But this is what he's doing, repeating himself. And that's what Ram is doing. And it's very valuable. But then, and there, I would like to strike a note of caution, because when we try to tell the large story, then there is danger of losing nuances. If we talk about communalism, for example, and if we say that communalism of both sides is wrong, then we are right and we are also wrong. Because in the India of present times, there is no both side communalism. It simply doesn't exist. And we need to discuss it, and we need to discuss it elaborately, why the term communalism is now irrelevant and why it should be replaced by majoritarianism, because communalism always give you a sense of a comparative thing, because a Hindu communalism and Muslim communalism or Christian communalism, all of them need to exist to make communalism communicable. But the times we are living in is not the time of communalism anymore. This is something we need to understand, and this is something I wish Ram had discussed a bit more in his book. But given the nature of the book, because as Seema said, that it covers a wide range, not only of history but also of ideas. So at cases it jumps, at cases it reads as a simplistic explanation of many concepts, and that I understand given the nature of the book, because Ram seems to be a person in a hurry, and given the sense of mortality with which we live, we think that we won't live the next day. So we have to say everything we want to say, and that needs to be said here. So that burden of mortality also, I think, weighs on this book. But I would urge the readers to go through the book carefully, not to agree with everything that is being said, but to appreciate the concern behind it, and also to appreciate the direction in which the author is taking you. You can disagree with him at places. For example, where he is discussing OSC, I don't agree with him. I again say I wish he would have discussed it a bit in a leisurely manner, because it does injustice to OSC. And why the very presence of OSC is seen as divisive. It's again perception. And this is what we need to discuss. Why is it that when OSC speaks in a constitutional language, they say that, yes, he is talking in a constitutional language, but he doesn't mean it? How do we reach that conclusion? What is behind it? And why do we say so? why is it then when Owaisi said, referring to the atrocity that had taken place in Kanpur, when he said that the policemen will have to answer, this regime is not going to last, and you will have to answer, you'll be held accountable, and it was seen as a communal remark. It was not, because what Owaisi was trying to say that, well, police officers, bureaucracy, all of you are responsible for the crimes taken in your jurisdiction. And you cannot take this excuse that, well, this political authority was there, and that's why we couldn't do something. This political authority is temporary. It will go, hopefully. It has to change. So, but this is, again, as I say, a small clipping. When discussing a book of this nature and of range, Ram wants us to think about cultural nationalism or religious nationalism. He wants us to think about why religious nationalism or cultural nationalism is a narrow way of living together, and why civic nationalism is a better way of living together. And as Seema said, that assassination of Gandhi, and this is 75th year of assassination of Gandhi. You must remember, we are celebrating 75th year of India's independence. But we must not forget that it's also 75th year of Gandhi's assassination. And Seema said that the shadow hangs over it. So what's that shadow? The shadow of that conspiracy, which the status quo, vested interest, intense interest, which wanted India in their hands when British were to hand over power. So has that nexus again been revived? This is something we also need to think about. So thank you very much, Ram, for writing this book and for keep repeating yourself. Please do that. That is what this nation needs. That's what we need. Not to think that secularism has become an old, boring concept. Keep reminding people that even if old, it's not very old, by the way. Even if old, it's a very useful, it's the best way available to us. And civic nationalism is still the best way for people to find a space where they can live together with respect for each other, for the practices of each other. Especially in these times, these questions become very stark when you see even the courts forgetting it. When the courts talking in a majoritarian language without accepting it. When the courts think that they can decide what is essential to a religion, they don't understand at all. They think that simply by reading books, they can decide what is essential and what is not essential. So the fact that humility has gone somewhere else and arrogance has taken over, and this is again a majoritarian arrogance. And when uniformity and homogeneity have become synonymous, and when uniformity gets offended by the very presence of a different color or a different different manner of covering your head or walking or eating, then I think books like Religious Nationalism, Social Perceptions and Violence, Sectarianism on Political Support become very important. So thank you very much, Ram. Thank you very much, Viraya, for having this.
Thank you, Apurvananji. By way of kind of information, we started observing 75th anniversary of death anniversary of Gandhi from last January 30th to next January 30th. As a part of that, we are introducing a book on Gandhi in each month. So we started with U.R. Anantamurthy's book in January, and we are coming up with a book written by a Telugu radio All India Broadcasting Service person, Nagasuri Venugopal, in this month of February. And we are planning to continue for next 10 months, so that we can get a wider perception and understanding about Gandhi and his role in what we are thinking about shaping of modern India. With this information, I request.
I think we're here to add to your information. It would be very important to keep talking about the assassination, because
Yes,
I find it very surprising when I read the accounts of the meeting that took place in Wardha on 3rd February in March 1948, and they forget to talk about the cause of assassination. So they talk about ideas of Gandhi, of Sarvodaya, everything, but why Gandhi was killed. So I would suggest that here are 3 books. Let Us Kill Gandhi by Tushar Gandhi, and a book which by Dhirendra Kumar Jha, The Making of Nathuram Godse, his idea of India, Gandhi's assassin. And the 3rd book is The Murderer, the Monarch, and the Fakir by Apu Suresh and Priyanka Kotamaraju. These 3 books must be discussed. But apart from other books, there is a book by a Hungarian playwright called Nemeth Laszlo, and it has been published. It was published, I think, 3 years back in Hindi, called The Death of Gandhi. Play, but it's a very perceptive play. Given if you think that this man who has not come to India is sitting in Hungary, and how perceptive he is when he describes the last months of Gandhi and understands how Gandhi was killed, why Gandhi was killed. So this book, Gandhi Ki Mrityu or Death of Gandhi, should also be discussed. There are other books, but thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry for interrupting.
No. It's a welcome interruption. We scheduled Dhirendra Jha's book on March 20th. And I request Apurvananji to help us to reach out the other authors so that we can schedule all others as you suggested.
I will do that.
Thank you.
Even
Please.
Tushar Gandhi is quite approachable. Apurva can try. If
Ram can also try. Yeah.
even I can help you in that.
Both of you.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Ram shares his geography. He's in Bombay. Ram.
He's a quite friendly person, very nice person.
Yeah.
We have interacted on so many occasions.
Yes, sir. Now I request Ram Punyani to respond to the both the presenters, and there are some questions that may be taken up at the end of the
First of all, Viraya, I really am thankful to your platform. This is my second appearing here. Last time when you discussed the book on Modi, that was a great experience for me, because one can undertake serious discussion with full disagreement with each other, but bringing out the very rich concepts during this period. So that was the first one when I really felt the importance of such platforms. Unfortunately, there are not too many, and fortunately, with the discovery of Zoom, probably I hope more such platforms can come up, if not in the physical space, at least in the Zoom account. And as far as Seema's comments are concerned and Apurvanand's comments are concerned, I am really very happy. I am feeling very great amount of happiness, in the sense I cannot thank them enough for their appreciation of the book. First of all, for their agreeing to discuss this book. Secondly, for going through carefully the strengths and weaknesses and the scope of the book. And thirdly, their kind words for this book. Now, as far as I'm concerned, of course, I must make it clear that I am not a person who comes from humanities background. My background is totally of a different type. And these things I had to take up to engage, mainly because when I felt that this communalism, and lately, as Apuranan correctly points out, this majoritarianism, that time when I began engaging with these issues, that time mainly it was addressed as communalism by most of the scholars and outstanding activists like Ken Panikkar, Asghar Ali Engineer. That was the word which was used. But of course, the following, but later on, as its nature has changed. But my major concern was the social perceptions, because I am always very much stuck with one of my experiences while working in IIT. And that was after demolition of Babri Mosque. Suddenly, everybody, two slogans came up. One was Jai Shri Ram, and second was Babar Ki Aulad. Of course, Jai Shri Ram, coming up in a Hindu family, Ram Ram or Siya Ram has been the major way we used to address our relatives and friends in the childhood. And suddenly this Babar appeared, and then when I started trying to understand these things, there are brilliant books and other things which are available to understand whole Babri issue. And that time this debate was very much there. But I picked up on this mainly the historical aspects. And initially I felt that even this violence which is orchestrated, I do believe that violence is not spontaneous. It is mostly orchestrated. It is orchestrated on the base of hate, which has been manufactured. This hate in turn has been manufactured using the misconceptions. And misconceptions, when of course, I will call it misconceptions, but probably those who have come to believe it because of a particular conditioning, a particular regular bombardment of those things, they may not obviously feel that this is a misconception, but I did feel that these are gross misconceptions. And so that was my first engagement when I started taking up medieval history. And I myself was surprised that there were so many simple things, why temples were destroyed, how did Islam spread in India, the nature of Muslim community in India, the conversions coming from the low caste and all that. So that in a way it was surprising, but in a way it fitted into my own way of thinking, where the dominating factor is objectivity and rationalism to some extent in my own way. I may not be very accurate in using these terms. So this medieval history was very important. So I tried to understand some of the subtle nuances of this. And Purvanand, I must has correctly pointed out that I'm fairly repetitive. And I must tell you one small joke that those people, one organizer used to have my seminars and lectures, and that organizer got tired of me, mainly because she used to hear the same thing again and again. And there is a small joke about this also. Once I had visited Bhopal for 2 days, and in Bhopal I delivered 6 lectures, and the driver who was with me, unfortunately, he heard all those 6 lectures. And at the end of the second day, he says, "Sir, I can reproduce your lecture very properly." I said, "Very good. Please try it. That will help my cause in any way." So repetition, in a way, there are some core concepts which I do need to repeat all the times. And one is which Seema pointed out about this rise of communalism in India from the what I call declining classes of landlords and kings who were uncomfortable with the social changes, and social changes which were occurring mainly related to the caste equations and gender equations. Actually, what we see in this politics is by and large a persecution of religious minorities, Muslims, and lately Christians to a great extent. But that, I think, is a part of the story. The deeper part of the story is that the equality in the caste equations, the struggle for abolition of caste, social justice, and also gender justice, which is least talked about. So my understanding got rooted there in late 19th century, when Jyotirao Phule, Savitribai Phule, and of course Ambedkar joins in the early 20th century. Their efforts for work amongst the Dalits and women, whereby that empowerment is taking place. And I could clearly see that that time, these both communal streams, the Muslim and Hindu communal streams, very little is available on a simple literature, but both these were together for a long time. And right, for example, United India Patriotic Association, formed by two major leaders, the Nawab of Dhaka and the Raja of Kashi, Shiv Prasad. They were together in the same organization for close to, I believe, 20 years. And then it was the British policy which pulled out the Muslim communalist on one side, and whatever remained came up as Hindu nationalism. So the most glaring part of this, of course, begins from that communal historiography, where kingdoms and the kings are seen through the prism of their religion, not that they are there for to power, to exploit the peasantry, and to perpetuate a system where caste and gender hierarchy remains permanent. So those points I tried to understand in depth. That was one. And then as a part of this communal historiography, I could clearly see how to communicate was a different point. I could clearly see that what these today, what Muslim communalists that in India, some of the extremists may be there, but by and large, with partition, one of the things was that this Muslim communalism became totally deflated. And of course, it is resurfacing in some forms, which we need to understand much more. So they mainly focused, while focusing on the other, Muslim communalists focusing on the Hindus and passing derogatory comments on that, and Hindu communalism passing derogatory things on the Muslims. And the surprising thing, as Apuranand points out, these perceptions are very important. How did the kings got associated with present communities? Now, the simple point is, how is today's Muslim responsible for what Aurangzeb did or what Akbar did? But that connection, how it came up in the society through manufacturing of this whole ideologies and other things is difficult to explain, but it did come up. So, and later on, of course, I have also included part of Kashmir and partition process, because later on today, when you criticize Pakistan, that becomes a signal for something against Muslims of India. When you were talking about some issues related to sympathetic to Kashmir people's operation, that again became symbol as if you are trying to support the Muslims in India. So that those sort of things, of course, it took me a lot of effort to go through each and every issue. These issues may sound to be unconnected, but there is a deeper connection which flows from ancient India, like why I had to go to ancient India and Lord Gautam Buddha, Ashoka, and Shankaracharya, mainly because this communal ideologies generally believe in the first comer. They always try to prove that we were the most original people here. So we should have the exclusive possession of this land. And that's how Golwalkar, their second ideologue, also points out. So that's what forced me to go into this very difficult portion of some of the aspects of ancient India. Of course, I have not mastered the ancient Indian history in any way. I have just picked up some of the points which help me to understand how this majoritarian politics builds itself up from ancient India, then medieval India, and then in medieval India they try to show that how Hindus were persecuted, how Islam came by force, and again now from last one decade these things are being undermined much more, like what Jawaharlal Nehru describes in his book Discovery of India, Ganga Jamuni Tehzeeb, or what Mahatma Gandhi in his book Hind Swaraj points out about Hindu and Muslim rulers, Hindu and Muslim subjects living under a single rule. Those simple examples also, they are coming under heavy attack from the right-wing majoritarian ideologues, and they are also getting a lot of space in the social media and other places. So where this type of a history where we try to understand the people with related to process of production, related to caste system, related to gender system, that all is coming under severe attack with the new ideologues of the Hindu right. But that I think is something most important. I may not be very accurate in my outlining these things, but initially, I mean, as these things picked up before that, people were talking of subaltern history, where, I mean, you try to see the history of weaker sections of society, how they lived, how they struggled, how they tried to gain their dignity. Now that is totally out of the scene in the popular perceptions. So these are things, and then of course later on the things related to freedom movement. Initially, as I tried to grapple with these things, medieval history actually dominated. Now today, what is happening from last some 1 decade or so, things related to Gandhi, Nehru, and of course Gandhi murder is not generally talked about. I hope you must, many of you must be knowing, a film glorifying Godse is making the rounds, and a 10-minute clip of that Godse's statement in court. Now, it is quite moving in a way for those who believe in that. When I listened to that times and over again, I could see that there is nothing but falsehood in that, woven across a particular ideology. One falsehood after the second one, after the third one, and that's how the things went on. So today, friends, why I want to see work on these issues is basically, one thing is also, I don't know whether I'm right or wrong, but probably if our perceptions, we have to change. We also have to understand some of the facts and the interpretation of those facts. Of course, interpretation of facts is always very different with different ideologies, but I try to understand these ideologies relating to particular facts, like it may be related to Somnath temple, or it may be related to Babri Mosque, or it may be related to Gandhi murder. All those things, a correct factual elaboration and then interpretation from a point of view of my own. That's what I try to do. And I feel that today, as we are living in very dark times in a way, it is very important that we combat this majoritarian politics which has come up. And this politics is trying to very successfully, to a great extent, capture the minds of large sections of society. And that's what needs to be combated. I may concede the point that my elaboration of overseas politics, I myself am not satisfied with that. There are a lot of that I have put in just as a sort of filler of the gap, but I myself want to understand a bit more about overseas politics, because what he says is one thing very correctly, but what his brother, his younger brother, of course, he's not his, but he's responsible for his younger brother saying, because they both belong to the same party. And what his other MPs also say, how they provoke the Hindu majoritarianism further. That was the only point I tried to grapple, but I'm open to going into these sort of issues much more. And there are many where I myself will like to see that there are more. But my primary concern is the type of perceptions which have been built up by initially word of mouth, initially through the shakhas, Saraswati Shishu Mandir, Ekal Vidyalayas. Then after 2003, when the media got taken over by the corporate sector, and then when later on IT cell came up, social media came up. So there is a huge range of mechanisms through which this social perceptions have been constructed. Of course, I am always remembering Noam Chomsky's that thesis of manufacturing consent, but there it is a state which manufactures consents through media and other things, while here this type of a manufacture of perceptions is done by vast mechanism which has grown in strength, and one doesn't know where we can really try to curtail that and try to bring back a sort of a perceptions which promote love, amity, harmony in the society, and so that we can focus on the real genuine issues related to our society. So that was the sole aim of this book, which of course over a period of years I tried to study one aspect or the other, and I thought it will be good that if I put that all in between the two covers, and even the international phenomenon I had to take in, because mainly the object of hate is Muslim in India, and after 9/11 2001, the American media's whole effort of putting the blame on Muslims, promoting the word Islamic terrorism, that forced me to go into that topic also. So I thought it will make the thing complete. And the whole idea is that we try to fight against the social perceptions. And of course, I don't know what more needs to be done. That I will request all those who want a better society, that we need to fight these perceptions for the values which in India, beginning with Bhakti, Sufi, coming to Maulana Azad, Mahatma Gandhi, those values which have been propagated in some way. How do we bring back those particular amicable interpretations and perceptions where we don't look at our neighbor as our enemy, but as our friend, as a part of our community? So that, I think, is the basic anguish because of which I have been trying to work on this book in particular. So I leave it to the friends. How do we really take this battle forward? I'm saying battle in the positive sense, that struggle for ideas and struggle for fighting against these perceptions which have become fairly deeply rooted in the society. How do we combat that to put forward a vision of society which we will love to have? Thank you very much. Questions are welcome.
So there is one question to Ram sir.
Yeah.
Though there is an increase in violence in India over the last almost a decade, the nature of violence is being a consistent attempt is being made to de-link the violence from the religion-centric violence, even in the government records and other things. So, how do you want to your comment on that, basically?
Yeah, my comment is simple, that this was regarded as a violence directed against religious communities, at least till 2014. I am also part of a Center of Study of Society and Secularism. Every year we bring out the report against the religious, report of violence against the religious minorities. And so far, at least whatever we of course not only depend on Home Ministry or the government records, but also on the newspaper and reports coming from Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, and other people's tribunals. So in last 6-7 years, with this government in power in the center, a lot of changes are coming up. So if this is coming up, this is a part of their thing. Like they destroyed so many records which are so valuable related to our independence movement. Huge number of records were destroyed. And looking at this violence also as another act of crime, probably it suits their politics to grow. That's why they may be doing it. But I also must say that there are other organizations also. If the government records are not there, there are records like Persecution Relief, which documents the violence against Christians. And there are some tribunals which come up occasionally in the society, which do give some record of this violence, but not completely. But I am not aware of this, how Home Ministry, Police Department are keeping these records lately. I am not much aware of that.
Generally, what happens, I'm sorry,
Yeah, please.
Generally, what happens that police FIRs are recorded, and that's how it enters the official register. Yeah, so that's how it gets recorded, an act of violence. But police doesn't describe the nature of the violence. And that's why when you try to find out whether what is the number of or the extent of violence against Christians, it becomes very difficult because Home Ministry doesn't report it. And lately they have stopped recording it, specifying the nature of violence. That's why you will have to go to platforms dedicated to recording these kinds of violence. The platform called ADF, which records it, and it informed that in 2021, nearly 500 cases of small and big violence on Christians, and it was a huge jump.
I agree, Guru. I agree. That is, ADF is one and persecution relief is another.
Yes.
Who have been documenting it. And even about anti-Muslim violence also, there are some occasional tribunals. Now, one good thing has happened, good, I mean, just in a partial way, that there are many local groups which are investigating the acts of violence, and they are trying to put it out in the form of reports. So some of the centers are doing it. So from that's where we can now get a correct picture, and it may not be the police or the Home Ministry which will give us a true picture of the things. True.
And one should also keep this in mind that now it's getting more and more difficult even to record things, because as we saw in Tripura, that for nearly a week, world outside Tripura didn't even know what was happening there. And when some young reporters started sharing news, Tripura police filed cases against them, and 102 people are now facing FIRs against them. So it's getting, for example, the violence in Uttar Pradesh after the anti-CA protest. So we don't really know the extent of that violence and how many people have fallen victim to that, because many people who were targeted don't want to talk about it.
Yeah.
So
there is one more and more interesting question, I believe. This is for three of you, the panelists. What is the differentiating character of authoritarianism of 1970s and now in India? Because is repeatedly being used the word authoritarianism in those emergency struggle against emergency. The same vocabulary was used. So what is the differentiating character between the authoritarianism of now and then? I request all three of you to respond to that.
How do we begin? We begin
Yeah,
with
Simaji, so that I think she is supposed to have some.
Yeah, I think there are lots of differences, and there are some sort of similarities too. For me, the most worrying thing is that Indira Gandhi was running this authoritarian number, which went against the grain of Indian social conservatism. So she was ranged against a whole lot of people she was not batting for the Indian conservative project. She may be an authoritarian, she put people behind jails, she had no business to do what she was doing, but she was actually going against what was the conservative piece. Here, what is most worrying is that deep conservative ideas that have held India back, that do not want a Navnirman, that want a Punah Nirman, which hark back to, are the ones who are executing the authoritarian sort of number. So for me, that's the most worrying thing, that it's locked in step, which it's beyond social conservatism. It's rooted in bigotry. It's not even conservatism. So for me, that's the biggest thing that makes the emergency time authoritarianism stand out against it. This is not like a dictatorship. In that sense, it is, a dictatorship, but it has an important support of a significant, powerful section. It may not be the majority. It is imposing its writ on other people. So I think this is where it comes very close to the F word. And certainly it is inspired by it openly. Actually, we are the ones who are hesitating in calling it fascism. They aren't. They take kind of their gurus who they are kind of talking about. They completely say, they Munje, etc., talk about Mussolini. They talk about Hitler. They, as Dhirendra Jha's book, which Puranand was mentioning, speaks of how Godse is the dictator. He's called the dictator because they aspire for that. Otherwise, which organization which claims to be nationalistic in 1925 will have a uniform of khaki shorts and white shirts in India at that time? So it just... So for me, that's like what is starkly different, how it's tied in with the Indian bigoted project, the dictatorship.
Apurvananji.
Yeah, again, and it helps your discussion. But there's a book which answers your question, and it's by Arvind Narayan, called India's Undeclared Emergency, Constitutionalism and the Politics of Resistance. And you must have a discussion around this book with Arvind in attendance to understand the difference between what we call that declared emergency and this undeclared emergency. And the difference that Arvind makes, and it's very important to understand that yes, those 2 years of emergency were authoritarian, and many constitutional provisions were suspended, and it was something announced by the regime. We knew that were suspended. That's one. But the second and major difference between these 2 eras is that this authoritarian, it is authoritarianism, but this is authoritarianism plus. And what is that plus? Arvind explains that this plus is that India is heading towards totalitarianism. That was not the project of Indira Gandhi. Indira Gandhi was not taking India on the path of totalitarianism, and this and the project that this regime has, it is one with clear totalitarian ambitions. Second, to transform the nature of the state and nation. That was not something we can say about emergency. Emergency didn't have any transformative agenda, and it's not an accident that the first thing that this regime did after it took over was to abolish Yojana Ayog, and in the place of Yojana Ayog, it established an institute which is hilariously called Niti Ayog, but it is National Institute for Transformation of India. So the project is to transform India, and what this transformation is something we need to talk about. And this is a societal transformation. This is transformation of the nature of state. This is transformation of the nature of federalism. This is one language, one party, one leader, one state. And that's why when Rahul Gandhi said that India is a union of states, and there was an immediate assault on him that Rahul Gandhi is denying oneness of this nation. What Rahul Gandhi was trying to tell the people of India is that you have to look at Constitution, and the Constitution describes India as a union of states. So, and this is what Tamil Nadu has started doing, that call this government a union government and not a central government, which is wrong. So Arvind's book is very helpful in understanding the difference. The difference is between authoritarianism, but it affected all sections of society, as Seema said, all sections of society, Hindus, Muslims, Christians, etc. But if you look at the present day, quote unquote, undeclared emergency, it affects 2 sections of society more than any other, and that is Muslims and Christians. And there lies the difference, because it wants to turn Muslims and Christians into second-class citizens. That was not the case with emergency of Indira Gandhi. And that's why this present day authoritarianism, which is authoritarianism plus, that is to take India towards totalitarian state, is very, very dangerous, and we should stop talking about emergency and this era in comparative.
So that means there is a challenge before the intellectual community of the country to name it.
And they have named it. It is a totalitarian regime.
Yeah.
So we should not call it authoritarianism. Now, some intellectuals like Pratap Bhanu Mehta, now they have agreed to call it colloquial fascism. So there was a discussion in left circles earlier, 2-3 years back, whether we should call it fascism or not. So they wanted to see features of classical fascism, call it fascism. But scholars like Umberto Eco and many scholars of fascism have told us that fascism won't reappear in other geographical locations in the same form. It would appear in different forms. And you have to see how fascism starts coalescing, because that is something you need to foresee and understand. And now we can say safely, again, this safely is thing we use very in an ironical manner. We are unsafe. That India is a fascist state. And Seema has just posted that article called Umberto Eco it's called Our Fascism. And Umberto Eco says, and I'll take 1 minute, 2 minutes to help you understand why fascism looks different, but you will have to keep your eyes very widely open and also sharp. Fascism is like a game, so it can be played with 2 persons, 11 persons, 22 persons. It's like a game of football, where you can change your combination and permutation, and the aim is to score goal. So it's not like you have fixed rules to help you identify what fascism is. It will keep changing. The aim is to score goal. So a combination permission will change of players, numbers, but a game remains a game. And that's what we need to understand, that we have reached a state of fascism.
Now, Ramji.
Yeah, actually, both my friends have very nicely put forward many points. And I am reminded of one article in EPW immediately after Babri demolition, and that was by Sumit Sarkar. Its title, of course, it was a small article, but its title and the content was very rich. It was Fascism of Sangh Parivar. That's how Sumit Sarkar, the great historian, saw it. Now, there, of course, many points have been brought out, but 2 central points I would like to point out in the present situation. One is that in Indira's time, it was just a authoritarian imposed from the top, only from the top, through an administrative mechanism. Now what is happening, it is you have whole infiltration of the state system in education, bureaucracy, police, partly judiciary, election commission. Most of the places you see the type of people which are sitting and trying to undermine state institutions, democratic institutions, trying to damage them irreparably. That is one part. And second is the role of vigilantes, the people at the ground who take the law into their hand with full amount of impunity and knowing that nothing will happen to them, and the type of dharma sansas which feel, again, it is their right to talk in this particular way. So in no way it can be compared to the emergency which we saw in 75. It is a much, much deeper phenomenon. Whatever you name it, it is basically to not on, as Apurvanand said, on one side, this targeting the Muslims and Christians, and on the second side, which I say is not very clearly visible and not so obvious, is to maintain or push back the struggle of social justice and struggle for gender justice. I somehow feel that if we go more deeply, those 2 aspects of the present system are also very important for us to understand, whatever be the label you give to the system. And of course, many people have called it fascist. Some people also feel that there are elements of fundamentalism in this, where a particular version of religion is imposed on the society. So this, even if it doesn't fall in the classical fascist analysis, but it is very close to that, also picking up some of the features of fundamentalism.
Thank you for detailed explanation. This for Ram, sir. Can you please elaborate a little on about 16-member committee that is looking into the remaking of history or remaking of India?
Yeah, 16-member committee.
Because
course,
almost all the people forgot that.
Yeah, no, we know that. We know that. See, so far, the Indian history writing that is being defamed as coming from the leftist. But whosoever the pioneers of history writing in India, they have been internationally acclaimed, thorough professionals in the art of, because history is also, after all, a science. So their professional competence is above doubt. Now, these people who have been 16 men you see, who have been put into this committee, most of them, they do believe that the present type of history is wrong, and we had a glorious ancient period when all those social relations and knowledge. So they are talking of reconstructing the history from 12,000 years, which is practically, I mean, they are trying to obliterate the difference between history, mythology, and fiction. Like whatever little one knows about these people who are part of this history reconstruction project is basically to glorify a particular period of history when we had all these values closer to Manusmriti, deeply rooted in the society, and a glorification of the past to impose those type of values in today's system. That roughly what I will say. Like, of course, you should also remember that they have appointed a high-level committee of scientists to research on Panchgavya. I'll just inform my friends here, Panchgavya is a mixture of 5 products of cow. It is cow dung, cow urine, cow ghee, cow milk, and cow curd. So mixing them, and government is spending, earmarking a huge amount of funds under coordinated by IIT Delhi. This project is going on where top scientists are coming out with some sort of a thing. So Baba Ramdev is not alone in trying to bring out Coronel. That same thing is being done at a very higher scale also.
Yeah, and also the effect of Mahamrityunjay Jap on patients in coma is being studied at AIMS. Is what is AIMS Delhi, All India Institute of Medicine.
I don't know whether you have heard astrology OPDs, astrology outpatient department.
Yes, yeah. Established 4 or 5 years back.
Yeah, they wanted to start it so that before you go to see the doctor, the astrologist will tell you what is your fate in the future or what you should be doing for that.
And to add to it is the Charak
Shapat.
That is now being administered, where doctors have to describe themselves as Dvijas.
Yeah.
So they are the new Dvijas.
A few years before, our scientists collaborated with the project of Large Hadron Collider to unlock the secrets of physics and the laws of natural dynamics. Now our scientists are collaborating with something new altogether in nature and its implications.
Scientists and now historians and now astrologers.
Yeah.
Actually, and also this, what Apurva is also saying and what Ram says also, to understand the complexity. Like if you see in the way Mr. Modi would like to appropriate the whole ISRO success. So this obsession with this gizmatic, the digital dashboard, numbers, so tools, these digital toys, and a complete and utter disregard for fundamental science, and both happening at the same time. So it's almost sort of destroying any ideas of reason or A leads to B in the common people, which is what I think the new education policy is also designed to do. And on top of that, then you construct an edifice of whatever I tell you is true, this sort of miracle kind of thing that you just believe in because, the Führer, the great leader, says it's true, so you believe that it's true. So it's almost like the televangelists, Babas, who sort of just opine and you're expected to fall in line. So I think it's a very dangerous relationship with also technology, this science and gadgetry. That is also quite puzzling to watch. And I think here our science graduates and people from IIT, etc., and all of you, whoever are scientists and people amongst you all, the burden rests a lot on those people to take us down a sort of a scientific, rational path, because that is ultimately the only thing which will act as brakes on this, if anything will act as a brake, is a rationality and scientific understanding of people and their own, Sorry, random thought.
Seema, rationalists and scientists, as you talk, I am just reminded of murder of Dr. Dabholkar, Kalburgi, Pansare, and Gauri Lankesh, who were murdered just because they were trying to pursue the path of rationality and trying to take it to society in their own way. So, because those who are in the seats of power, they determine a lot. Now you compare when Nehru was trying to develop these scientific institutions and research institutions, how he was encouraging the scientists to do their own way. He was not dictating the way that you have to do this, you have to do this way. And now question is, there is already ready-made thing which they are dictated and supposed to follow. And I was surprised to see the list of those people doing research on Panchgavya, one of the top scientist names who are in charge of so many scientific institutions. They are a part of that.
Yeah, I think this for Apurvananji to respond. A set of new middle class came into existence with the state support, like reservations and kind of welfare system for last 75 years. So how this newly educated and well settled in proper secured sense of economic living, they are able, they can be bullied to be incorporated into the whole project of Hindutva. So what is the role of this new middle class?
I won't say bullied, because it's also, they have willingly participating in it. So I don't agree with this this understanding that media is being bullied and media is under pressure, etc. A lot of it is ideological. And if we look at the middle class, the nature of the middle class is still Hindu, largely Hindu. So if you look at the numbers, so it's largely Hindu. And it does suffer from a feeling of lack. And it feels that it was deprived of Hindu Rashtra, it was its right. And that's why it never believed, and this is again a sweeping statement, never believed in the ideas of rationality and its relation to science, scientific institutions, modern institutions, has always been transactional, very, very transactional. To get to this class, worldly gains, and that is what it has achieved. But if you look at the cultural practices of this middle class, they have largely remained they are still rooted in what we call retrograde. For example, there are still Brahmins who have studied in IIT, who have studied in AIMS and other institutions, which still perform Yajnapavid. So still Brahmins are being produced. And by calling it a cultural thing. So it's utter deception. You are producing Brahmins. When you keep doing it, you are perpetuating casteism. So this is the phenomenon we need to study a bit more, slightly. But this is my observation of how middle class has behaved in the last 70 years. And that's why I don't find it very surprising that bureaucrats so readily agree to obey the masters. they are very powerful people, bureaucrats and police. And if they refuse, it would become very difficult for political masters to push their agenda. And I know, and all of us know about bureaucrats who have done that. But the fact that they refuse to do that and do exactly the opposite thing is not only because of some pressure or fear, it's also because they lack conviction, constitutional values. They don't really believe in constitution.
Thank you, sir. Ramji, anything to add to that from your end, or shall we proceed?
Nothing particular. I think we have covered a lot of aspects.
Yeah. Okay.
Because there are 11 chapters and there are some, like Kashmir is also there. Caste system is also there. Things of related to gender are also there. So each is a topic by itself. Though I try to draw a deeper connection with this Hindu nationalism, but they are fairly autonomous topics also, but related to rise of Hindu nationalism also.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the wonderful presentation by Apurvanandji and Semaji ji. And thanks once again for allowing us to do this.
Pleasure. Pleasure is mine.
And I think it is coincident that we extended our discussion towards fascism and how to define what are the features. Seshu, can you share the poster? Yeah, this is what we are coming up with the next on 25th. 25th, I think the date there's a correction in the date. So 25th, we are discussing the resistible rise. What are the different experiences of fascism in European countries, particularly, and both the editors will be presenting on our platform. So I request all the participants to share this and also join our channel.
Very good. Both of them are my colleagues. So
yeah, I know that. I know that.
One of them is my neighbor.
Oh.
Also.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. మిత్రులారా, ఈ సమావేశం ముగిసింది. మరలా 25వ తారీఖు ఫిబ్రవరి 25వ తారీఖు ఫ్యాసిజం గురించి తెలుసుకోవడానికి కలుద్దాం. Thank you.
So we take your permission to leave?
Please.
Thank you, Seema, Apurvanand.
Thank you, Ram. Thank you, Apurvanand. Thank you, Viraya.
Pleasure being here.